Mr. Representative, thank you so much for being here. Your reaction to this new round of subpoenas, Democrats looking increasingly, I don't know if serious is the right word, but they're moving forward with this impeachment inquiry. What's the latest?
Well, it's been a fishing expedition from the very beginning. There's never been a high crime or misdemeanor that they've been able to lay out, and yet they just keep marching down this impeachment drumbat because their radical base wants this. This is something they said at the very beginning when they got the majority last year. They would impeach the president regardless of fact. That's the dangerous thing about this. And oh, by the way, if they were so serious, why did Adam Schiff have to start his committee hearing with a parody, a joke, trying to make fun of this and actually lying about what really happened and trying to make up a conversation between the president and Ukraine President Zelensky? Why, by the way, if it's so serious, and think about this, Nancy Pelosi is saying she wants to start impeachment proceedings against a president of the United States. She didn't even require a House floor vote, which has always been the case, to start impeachment. But if she really thought he should be removed, why did she then leave town for 2 weeks? The next 2 weeks, Congress will not be in session. If you thought the president had committed such a high crime and misdemeanor that he should be removed, would you really leave town for 2 weeks, or would you keep everybody there day and night till you get to the bottom of the facts? There are no facts for impeachment. They want to appease their radical base, and it's dangerous to go down this road.
What do you think changed for Nancy Pelosi, though? Because for a long time, she was sounding very rational on this issue, and she was coming out and not endorsing impeachment because I think she knew deep down inside that it could have potential negative consequences for her party when it came time to the 2020 election. All of a sudden now, she went full speed ahead. What changed?
Well, keep in mind, Nancy Pelosi barely got the votes to be elected speaker, so she's always been balancing most of her conference versus the squad, the radical socialists who have been driving her agenda this entire year. And so as it kept going on, they've been pushing for impeachment, and she's been trying to hold them off. And then you saw over the weekend, AOC, who really is driving the speakership, not Nancy Pelosi, AOC tweeted out really going after Democrats for not doing enough on impeachment. And then lo and behold, 2 days later, Nancy Pelosi says that they're going to impeach the president. And she said that she had evidence of the president breaking the law, and it was going to come out with quid pro quo in this transcript. And then the transcript comes out, and there is no quid pro quo. There are no high crimes and misdemeanors. And instead of dropping it, she's got to continue appeasing this radical left base because they don't like the results of the 2016 election.
Congressman, you may be right that Nancy Pelosi is giving in to political pressure on the left. You may be right that this does not constitute high crimes and misdemeanors. But are you, as a leader in the U.S. Congress, comfortable with the president of either party in the Oval Office inviting a world leader, a leader from another country, to come in and basically interfere in elections, dig up political dirt on a political rival? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, first of all, there is no interference. I'm not comfortable with what Barack Obama did to work with Ukraine back in 2016 to try to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. And I don't see anybody in the mainstream media having any concern about that.
Sure, but Congressman, pardon me, but that was 4 years ago. I'm talking about today. And and again, it may not reach high crimes and misdemeanors, but you're going back in time. What about today? Are you comfortable as a leader in Congress about what happened on that call?
Yeah, I read the transcript, which, by the way, they were saying was going to have quid pro quo. There is not a single mention of quid pro quo, of any kind of foreign aid, all of those other things that they were talking about. In fact, Zelensky himself just the other day said he was not pressured. There was no pressure. In fact, Zelensky was the one who brought up some of the corruption they were talking about, and they were to go back in time. That conversation that was just released a few days ago between President Trump and Zelensky was talking about 2016 corruption. Some of the involvement that Russia had was being based out of Ukraine back in 2016, and they're still investigating it. Ukraine's still investigating it. President Trump is still real concerned about that corruption because he doesn't want it to happen again. It happened on Barack Obama's watch, the Russian interference with our election. But President Trump is trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's what they were talking about in the context of the conversation about interference.
Congressman, you're talking about a double standard. One of the people who pointed this out, who sometimes stumbles on the truth, but he's a left-winger, is Bill Maher. And on his program, he basically said it differently, but pointed out what you're saying. Here's what he had to say.
The more I read about this, no, I don't think he was doing something terrible in Ukraine, but it's just so, why can't politicians tell their kids, get a job?
It's too swampy.
Get a job. His kid was paid $600,000 because his name is Biden by a gas company in Ukraine, this super corrupt country that just had a revolution to get rid of corruption. It just looks bad. You did this in Ukraine? Well, Joe Biden did this. It does sound like something Don Jr. would do. And if Don Jr. did it, it would be all Rachel Maddow was talking about.
So speak to that hypothetical. Of course, if Don Jr. were doing that, the media would be all over it. Hunter Biden does it, and we're just now starting to realize there may have been some corruption on our side.
Well, clearly there is a double standard. You know, they've looked into the president's kids, his son-in-law, all of his cabinet. They've been making baseless allegations for years since he became president, and there's been nothing to it. And so when you look at what really did happen with Hunter Biden, by the way, that's not something that President Trump has been raising for years. A lot of people have been raising that question for years. Joe Biden himself bragged about it. I mean, he literally bragged, laughing, saying, hey, I was over there and I told him in 6 hours I'm leaving with the $1 billion unless you fire the prosecutor. For goodness sake, if that's not a quid pro quo, you know, they're calling him quid pro quo Joe right now. I mean, this is embarrassing that the media let this go for so long. But I'm glad that's being looked into. But the bottom line is President Zelensky got elected on an agenda to clean up corruption in Ukraine, which everybody knew was going on for years. And so the President Trump, in a very gracious call, is congratulating him on his election and just letting him know that America's got his back. There are some European countries that aren't doing enough to help Ukraine, and they talked about that as well.
Congressman, it seems to me that Democrats know how to talk about two things. They know how to talk about impeachment, and then they had to talk about Brett Kavanaugh, and both just go on and on and on. Now you have 2020 candidates shifting their focus to Justice Kavanaugh, renewing calls for his impeachment. We're now 1 year after his confirmation battle. What do you make of this? I mean, are they secretly fundraising for the RNC here?
They're out of control. I mean, the Socialist Democrats in Washington are now the party of impeachment. And literally just a few days ago, they were, as you said, talking about impeaching Justice Kavanaugh. And then they had this whistleblower complaint that, by the way, when you read it, it's really curious. It was written by attorneys, not by the person that might have been a CIA employee. So who actually was involved in helping coordinate that complaint? But in the end, they now are shifting back over to impeaching the president, which they said they wanted to do. Their leaders, the Chairman Nadler, the day he got elected, he said he wanted to impeach the president. And yet there was no basis. There still is no basis. And even you said there are no high crimes and misdemeanors, which is the standard in the Constitution. You should look at if something comes to you, an actual violation of law, not a third-party account, as this complaint is, riddled with misinformation. But if someone actually came to you with something, then you would go and look and see if there was wrongdoing. You wouldn't start an article of impeachment inquiry without even having high crimes and misdemeanors. And that's what they've done because they want to impeach him to appease the radical base to try to reverse the 2016 election. We're going to have an election next year. Yep. The country will decide who's going to be president, if President Trump stays or if it's going to be somebody else. Congress shouldn't try to interfere with the results of the 2016 election.
Well, Congressman, you started the segment by saying that this is a fishing expedition. We've been talking all morning about National Hunting and Fishing Day. I don't know if it was a tie-in or not, but you have a little fun down there.
Not quite, but
yeah. Go for it.
Boy, it really is. It's just bizarre times, though. I mean,
yeah.
Look, again, if there were real crimes that had come to them, and they've been looking, they thought the Mueller report was going to yield that to them, and it wasn't. And think about this. There are so many things we could have gotten done. USMCA, a better trade deal for America with the Canada and Mexico between the United States, could be law today. Yep. Over 160,000 new jobs. They won't even bring that to the floor. Lower drug prices. We passed a bill out of committee unanimously. Yep. Every Republican and every Democrat
things on the agenda
came together,
that may fall
and she
by the
won't bring
wayside.
that bill to the
You're
floor.
absolutely right, Congressman.
It's
We appreciate
a shame because a lot of really good things should be getting done.
All right, have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
so much.
it.